Good afternoon, LEC World. My name is Dr. Ana Valdez. I'm the Director of Organizational Effectiveness here at Latinx Education Collaborative. I'm super excited to be hosting my very first Ask an Educator. And especially today, I have Dr. Jackie Rodriguez, who will be joining us here in a moment from the Kansas City, Kansas Public School Systems, USD 500, which I am a very proud product of. So, Dr. Rodriguez, welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so this is a conversation. We ask some questions, we get your insights and input. But first off, I wanted to allow you an opportunity to introduce yourself, tell us what you do, a little bit of your background, and then we'll get into some questions about why education as a career goal.
Yeah, well, background, I grew up in the States in Dodge City, so I was very comfortable with people who looked like me everywhere, very heavy Latino community. And I have been in education now. This is about my 15th year. I was a Spanish teacher prior to what I do now. Second language acquisition is my wheelhouse and my passion. I just offended in April, so that was a labor of love and a really exciting opportunity. So, yeah, for the district, I am the Director of Multilingual Education and Services. I oversee the ESL program, our dual language program, Title I Part C, and then language support for the district.
Oh, fantastic, fantastic. Tell us a little bit about growing up in Dodge City. If you're a fan of Westerns, Dodge City was the town that everybody talked about in Westerns. But, Dodge City is really a unique, in my personal opinion, a unique environment or a unique city that really kind of is a great example of that city for Latinos shining on the hill of what we potentially could have. So share a little bit about Dodge City.
Yeah, it's an interesting. I don't really know how to explain it. I think that it's a very small town community. Like it's lots of comfort in that. Everybody kind of knows everybody, but what you see in the westerns of Boot Hill, they have it right there on White Earp, and you can go to the museum and do all of that. And I will just kind of elevate that the Boot Hill Museum has done a really beautiful job of uplifting like the Mexican village in the community. And KCK and Dodge City have a very interesting connection with the railroad. So lots of people that worked on the railroad, and Dodge also would come here to Kansas City. And so the Argentine district, there's that neat connection, which I really enjoy knowing that my great grandpa worked on the railroad, and they were really integral in kind of bringing the Latino community from desegregating that community. And so when I grew up, everybody was the same. It wasn't a big difference. And I think that's one of my joys of being in KCK is that I get to feel that again.
Yeah, yeah. And the cool thing about Dodge City is a lot of people don't know it's a large population of Latinos. I mean, like, I want to say close to 50%, but maybe not that high, or maybe a little bit more.
I would say it's maybe a little higher.
Oh,
if I
okay.
had to guess.
Yeah. And it was one of the very first cities, like probably 30 years ago or more, and one of the only cities in the state of Kansas that had elected a Latino for mayor. Right. So that's one of its claim to fame too. So yeah, I can definitely see the similarities between the connection with the railroad and the passion and drive for promoting education, because a lot of great talent has come out of Dodge City. And, right here we've got Dr. Jackie Rodriguez, who is, speaks well of the environment there in Dodge and all of that. So tell us a little bit about what sparked your passion for education. I always love to hear why people want to become educators. I know that I wanted to be a teacher since, second or third grade. And so I love to hear the stories as to why people choose education and what does that mean for you?
So I did alternative certification as a pathway. I did not in any way imagine myself in education. I actually majored. I was like a justice studies major, so poli-sci. I had a Spanish major as well, and I couldn't get a job in 2009. Like I did a lot of interviewing, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I am the first in my family to graduate college, and so there wasn't. My dad just said, ask a lot of questions. Find somebody that you can ask questions to. And so I did go to my advisor for Spanish, and he's like, I think you should teach. I was like, I don't think so. No, I think you would be good at it. And I was like, I don't know. So I took the leap. I got into a master's program. I did the alternative licensure. I did my student teaching at elementary. I was very set on being a secondary teacher. Did my student teaching at elementary, and I fell in love and have been in it ever since.
Yeah. Oh, little kids can really win your heart.
Yeah.
When you have them in the classroom. So I get why elementary would be a good choice for a lot of people. Like I said, I wanted to become a teacher since I was like in second or third grade. And I was like, I'm going to be a teacher. I came home and I told my mom, hey, I know exactly what I'm going to do. And I'm going to have to be a nun, Mom, because I was a Catholic school kid. So the teachers I had were nuns. And she's like, excuse me. And so we had a conversation. I am Catholic, so it wasn't like that big of a surprise that I had that with that quest. But yeah, and then I had an opportunity to teach middle school or junior high. Gosh, probably a long time ago, longer than you've been a teacher. But and I just fell in love with junior high kids. Just their energy and excitement and exploration and just everything about their world is just uncovering something new. And I think that is a good thing for teachers to experience as well, educators to experience as well, that constant drive of exploring and discovering new things and things that we've seen 100 times or more, right?
Yeah, I think that you did a beautiful job of just describing like that's the thing that I love about education. It's like when the light bulb turns on and you see it. It's like doesn't matter your kindergartner, your middle school, your high schooler, even our teachers get that way in professional development. And that's the thing I love the most.
Yes, completely agree. Completely agree. So tell me a little bit. It sounds like you've been in a couple of different districts. You're currently in USD 500. But tell me a little bit about the joys and challenges of being a Latino educator.
So I was in a district where there were very few of us, and so you're looked at in a different way. I realized after I left that district and I stepped out of the classroom to be an instructional coach, and I was a Spanish teacher, so you're allowed to be yourself in your four walls, and then when you step out, and I think even when we look at the numbers across, like we're still very few, even in a diverse district like KCK with
Mhm.
students. So there's a lot of loneliness, I think, that you don't realize that you get. And teaching is such a fulfilling job that until you step out of it or shift, then that changes. But I have I love in KCK where I can step into a classroom and kids can feel seen.
Mhm.
When I first started in the district, I would step into some classrooms and um, they would say like, "Oh, that's somebody's mom," and some of the kids would claim me as their mom. They're like, "Oh, that one's mine." I'm like, I'm not anybody's mom, but it's that idea of seeing somebody as a professional and wanting to cling on to that. And so, um, yeah, those are a little bit of those experiences. Mhm.
Mhm. And we talked a little bit about joy of education, but what are some joys that you've had yourself? I mean, you kind of shared a little bit before we went on air, but tell us a little bit about the joy that you had that you were sharing with us about it in another district?
Yeah, I have had the opportunity now in 2 districts to work on immersion and dual language programs. Um, setting the seeds for that, I actually got to go visit a building that I opened, and that building was opened up to be an immersion school with Chinese teachers, and so getting to work with those teachers and seeing old colleagues today as we were celebrating those kids that are graduating,
Hmm.
our first fifth grade class. But uh, it really sparked my love for teacher growth and development. I had a lot of um, learning opportunities myself on how to be a leader in that component. And so everything that I learned from that Chinese immersion program, I brought over to KCK, and we've been able to implement that in the dual language program. And I have a lot of joy for that program because it is a Spanish dual language program, so I can connect to it more than I did in the previous district, where I'm not a Mandarin speaker, but I definitely know how to teach and what that pedagogy requires for instruction.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And I didn't realize that it was a Chinese immersion. So kudos for you on that, because that's definitely in your wheelhouse, but beyond, stretching yourself beyond as far as your experience and exposure to things. So great job. Um, what is it that you've touched on a couple of things, and I want to kind of come back and visit those. And that's about something you said, and I've heard that before. As you know, the LEC does a lot of work with Latinx educators across the metro area. And actually across the country, we have Edgar was just this week in Indianapolis, and we have a collaboration with Teach Indy up in Indianapolis. And I know we've gone to other locations, other cities, Des Moines, St. Louis, Omaha, and we're always looking to kind of expand that outreach, not only because of growth opportunities, but really to talk about what it's like to be the only, often, but one of few Latinx or Latino or Hispano or Hispanic or Chicano or Chicana educator in your building, or sometimes in your district, or sometimes, heck, even in the city. Kansas City, as diverse and as multilingual as we are, we still only have about 1% of the total teacher population, and that's a lot of districts that we're looking at. Only 1% still is what the Latino population of teachers makes up. And so loneliness can be, it is a real factor. So how do you, or how would you address that? And how, maybe even how did you address that when you were the one that everybody kind of looked to, of she's going to handle it because she's the, Latina that we have on staff. And so we'll call her in to translate for a parent that comes in, or we'll have, her come in and do a PD for us about dealing with Latino families or whatever. So, kind of talk to us a little bit about how did you manage that singularity focus?
Um, I had an experience in college where I was asked to present something in a class, and it was along that lines of like what it's like to be a Latino, or I don't know what it was. And um, that experience has really marked me in who I am now,
Mm,
because I get up and I start to present, and the whole back row walks out. And then I was told some really ugly things. And so it really gave me some tough skin to sit in who I was as a person. So anytime that I've asked, or I've been asked to do something like that, I try to set my boundaries around like, this is what I will offer.
mm,
Anything else, like I should be compensated for
mm,
those things, or I need you to ensure that it's a safe space for me to present and for me to be myself authentically. And I think as a young teacher, I didn't know how to do that as well. Um, and so that loneliness was there. But my dissertation is around exactly this, right? What did it look like for those few educators, those few Latina educators, to get into then a principalship or into higher positions, because again, like, it's a lonely space where in education for us. And really, it's that cohort model, like having your friends, having that community. And I have thankfully been able to build that friendship with all of my colleagues, at least one or two in every building that I've been in my current district, to ensure that like I always have someone to lean on, even if they're not also Latino or whatever that may be, but having that colleague that you can trust and they trust you, and to build that. So what I would love to see, I think, is that the LEC continues to grow these teachers, and we can keep them in the classroom long enough so they'll start going that principalship pathway, because also what keeps teachers in the place is that principal. Your instructional leader makes a huge difference, and if they can connect with you, you're probably more likely to stay, and then we're not the only ones.
Yes. Oh, very well said. Very well said. And that's disheartening to hear that, um, as you were presenting, people would leave
Mhm.
and they didn't even know what you were going to say. And just the fact that they didn't have the courtesy
Mhm.
to extend.
Yeah.
And I think that is something that very similar. I've heard from others, and it does toughen you up. But how do you translate that to where you don't become too tough and lose focus on what that softness that you need to have for the young people that are in your classroom?
Mhm.
Um, and unfortunately, I've heard, like I said, I've heard that story before, and there's probably people out there now that will hear it when they see this video and be like, "Yep, I went through that, and I'm not alone. I'm not the only one." And it's tough. It is really tough. And I would say that's probably one of the challenges is being young, being Hispanic, and then being asked to present, and then have that kind of reaction to things. Um, Give me a story, if you will, of like a role model that you had as somebody that was an educator that you wanted to emulate, and you can still hear their voice every once in a while.
I had a grade school teacher, and I actually ran into her a couple months ago. Um, her She was just so warm
Mm,
as a person, and really encouraged I have these vivid memories of her just encouraging all of us at that whatever level you were, to do your best. And it was really hard to have a bad day in her class because she
mm,
just gave so much. Um and so that's something that I remember. But I'm not one of those people that's like, I wanted to be like this teacher. Like, I didn't I didn't know that I wanted to get into education, but it is the warmth that people offer. I think about the teachers that I have had in the past that um just eg- like respected every kid in a way that was like holistic. My daughter's fifth grade teacher is very much like that.
mm,
And she comes home and she's like, oh, today in school, like, it's the teacher that picks the right job for the kid. That's like, I see you, I see your leadership quality, or I see that you're really good at this. And um, that is a thing that I aspire to be like, as well as I really appreciate that, because I've seen it as a student, but I see
mhm,
it as a parent. And when my kiddo comes home and she's like, it's just this warmth of, I see you, I acknowledge you, and I want to position you in places where you can always excel.
mhm. Yeah, it's a like a sparkle in the eye or something
Mhm.
like that that you see, reflected. Yeah, I would have to agree that it is warmth. It's being seen. My inspiration, like I said, as a little kid, I wanted to, but it really hit home when I was in high school, and I had a great guidance counselor at J.C. Harmon High School, and it was Ralph Brightwell. And Mr. Brightwell, if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have gone to college. He saw something in me. I knew I wanted to go, but being a first gen, I had no idea how to get there. And my mom, she would just tell me, Mija, I really know that this is what your goal is, but I don't know how to help you. And I can support you, but I'm not able to, like, say, go and do this or fill out that form or whatever. And he just took the time and the patience, and without him I wouldn't have my doctorate today, because he started me on that pathway. And this was several years ago. A lot of rules have changed, but he actually, my mom didn't drive. He actually took us to campus so that we could see what campus looked like, and help me enroll in classes. And I mean, went above and beyond. And he probably didn't think of it as anything more than just doing his job, because he knew that this is one of his kids that he knew could go to college and be successful. And yeah, I was lucky. I was very fortunate. So I think it's that extra, that little, sprinkle of, whatever spice, and makes everything nice,
Yeah.
right? um, what about, and you've talked a little bit about this, but what about the whole navigating the educational system, as an educator in general, a female educator, a young teacher, a Latina? How did you navigate that, and what are some tips or ideas or advice that you would give young educators?
I the thing that I've been told, like my dad told it to me, I had an advisor tell me, like, ask questions, ask a million questions. That is the only way that I have figured out how to navigate anything.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we stay silent and we try to lean on someone's going to tell me, like, there really isn't anyone that's out there that's going to help you if you don't help yourself first. And you have to be vulnerable to ask those questions, and that isn't always easy. I very similar to you, and I had to, like, drag my parents. I'm like, I'm going to college, and we've got to figure this out. We've got to do fill out this paperwork and do
Yeah.
all of this, and really ask questions upon question upon question. Like, I think that is the the thing that has gotten me to where I'm at. I asked, like, what I get a master's, then what? And then what are the other options that I have? And um, it also develops a sense of confidence, I think, when you're told no sometimes, and that's okay. But it's something that, with practice, like, you can handle that gracefully. Um, I do think that also what's really important, like in education now, is to ask the hard questions, right? Like in my role, I think about questions around equity. I questions
Mhm.
around like, does this decision make sense? Like, are we thinking, like, holistically? And that is also uncomfortable, but they're the things are things change so fast. And so questions sometimes pause a little bit. It will slow it down so that we can kind of rethink and reshape, reimagine decisions that are being made, because we can't continue to do things the way that we've done them all the time. That's proven doesn't necessarily prove that it works.
Mhm.
um,
It's just something that we do,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah.
then the question, why do we do it that way? Why do you have to go to a 4-year college to get in to become a teacher? I did alternative pathway.
Mhm.
And again, from, just defending, most Latinos, most people of color also do alternative pathway licensure. That is the way we get in. We don't do the traditional 4-way track. So why would we just say that that's the only way to get in?
Right. No, great points. And asking that tough question, not only asking it, but finding out what it is, right? Because we could be right in the middle of it and not realize that sometimes, whether it's a process or a program or a decision that will impact our students, we don't get to the point of, oh, wait a second. Have we really vetted this out? Have we really, asked maybe even families how this would impact them, or in what ways will it impact them? And not always as much today as we have in the past, but sometimes as educators, we think we know best,
Mhm.
what's best for the student, or what's best for the teachers, or what's best for the family or the community, or on and on. So asking those tough questions can sometimes be the one thing that the decision makers need to hear,
Mhm.
so that they can really kind of um, put the right emphasis forward versus just putting the project forward.
Right. And I think that's where we confuse urgency with speed.
Ah.
Because I believe that things that are urgent require a lot of thoughtfulness.
Hmm.
And some people internalize urgency of like, we've got to get it out now. Like we need this in this moment. And that's where we get into what you just talked about. And I was like, it's not the full scope of what it could be. It's what I felt at that moment was needed. Um,
Correct.
and I do think when you ask the question, you slow it down so that it can be a more thoughtful, in-depth sort of decision that comes out.
Right. Yes, and oh, I love that. That was a great analogy, or yeah, of urgency and um, speed,
Yeah.
right? Speed of delivery. And so, yeah, and I think sometimes you know, yeah, I think that that's really a great example. So, and then just kind of slowing it down and having that conversation, we might find out that we were so in a rush to get things out the door that we didn't look at the full impact, and bring in everybody um, that should be a part of it. So yeah, good job. Um, if I were to give you a magic wand and say, okay, Dr. Rodriguez, you've got the wand. What one thing would you change? And you can only change one thing. What would that be, so that the future for Latinos students could be improved? What would that be?
I would increase bilingual education. Like that is to me, like if we can solidify L1, then you can build L2. Like
Mm-hmm.
you got to get your first language down and then you can build all those blocks. And I think now we're in this whole path of science of reading and all of these things, and we miss the multilingual brain because we get stuck on monolingual perspectives. And if
Mm-hmm.
everyone then is multilingual, we also know the research is very clear that multilingual students outperform monolingual peers. So if we give everybody a second language, then all of our kids will do well. I also think that it's restorative. It gives identity to kids that maybe don't have an identity. Um, we see that in our program now in KCK. Like it benefits all of the kids that are in the program in some way. Like just to see our African American students so like they're in it. They love it. They eat it up, and they're building a culture and an identity that is very uniquely theirs, where I can be who I am in my community and in my classroom. I can build this robustness. So I think that's what I would do.
Okay. So provide multilingual education across the board.
I
So basically, what you're saying is all boats rise.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, I love that. I love that.
yeah.
And what do you think it would take to make that happen? So the next question is, so if this is what your magic wand gives you, then what would it take to get there?
It takes buy-in.
Ah,
It takes buy-in, right? We celebrate always the high achieving monolingual student. Again, I've been in two different districts. Like they thrive on immersion and We celebrate the kids, and I think that's beautiful and wonderful. But um, we also miss the asset that our students bring with us. At our last board meeting, they shared about the syllabi literacy. And some of our students received silvers and golds in languages that we don't teach in the district. It's
Oh,
amazing. They came to school with their own language, the ability to write it and to read it. And there is nothing that our school system did for them because we don't teach it. We
ah,
don't teach Swahili in school, but they have enough of it in the background that they were able to access that syllabi literacy.
oh,
And
wow.
we don't celebrate that. And it's a huge asset and accomplishment.
Yes.
We
Yeah,
want them to learn English first, but again, you learn your L1 and you learn it deeply, then the other language comes and it
that's
all develops. So, yeah.
that's true. Oh, excellent, excellent. And so, yeah, because to get that seal of biling is it bilingual?
Biliteracy. Mhm.
Yeah, biliteracy. Thank you. Um, that's something that you can pursue on your own,
Mhm.
right? And so, if we had anybody out there that say there is a parent listening to this, how would they go about finding the pathway to get that for themselves or for their children?
Um, so every state's a little bit different. In
Mhm.
Kansas, it's through assessment. So that's one of the things that, in collaboration with our curriculum and instruction team over the last few years, is that we've just made the test accessible to kids.
Gotcha.
Um, and so when they're able to take the test in a second language, then we're able to determine where they're at in proficiency, and then they take the English proficiency. I don't work as closely with it now, but I know there's a portfolio component in it. Um, so, I mean, again, you have to ask the question because it is a little different in each state. I will also add to like that buy-in is that often dual language immersion, all of those language acquisition programs are seen as pilots, but
Mm,
the 30 plus years of research behind it says you shouldn't pilot. It is the way that you should go.
yeah.
And so that buy-in mind shift of um, it's not something we're going to try and see if it works. There's lots of research that already proves that it works.
Yeah, so you just have to take what's proven,
Yep.
take the science, take the research, and move forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, I gotcha. I gotcha. So yeah, so they then should probably check with their counselors, their advisors to see how they would go about doing that
Yeah.
wherever the district is or whatever district that they're in. Okay, excellent. Um, so let's kind of shift gears and let's talk a little bit about not that this topic of literacy and understanding that isn't interesting because it is, and we could talk all day on that. But let's talk a little bit about creativity and how does creativity shape education and activism?
Hmm. It's a great question. I think I was in an early childhood classroom this morning
Oh,
and play, right? Like all they do is play. And they were um, just to see where their imagination took them during their centers. And we hosted some teachers from Indonesia, and they were asking lots of questions about the play
mm,
and how creative the kids were. And it's that spark where I think we miss that component of it. But kids have such great ideas. And one of the preschoolers invited our guests and says, "Will you play with me?" And like the look on her face was like, "Yes." And she sat down. They were in the dollhouse, and it was like we couldn't get those teachers out of there because that creative spark, like it was joy, right? And I think creativity brings joy.
mm,
Um, and so there's that component of just opening the mind, and
mm,
then I think then the deep thoughts come, right? When we have joy, activism is joy in itself, right? There are those components that you have to really love what you're advocating for. You have to really know self with it, and um, sometimes when we are joyful, it is a sign of resistance in it, and we do that through that creativity, through that culture component. I have a very creative kiddo, and she dances and does all of the things, art and everything. And she's downstairs painting now, but her, like, it just, like, it just gives her life.
Mhm.
And then it sparks ideas that she talks about or things that she wants to do. And um, it's one of the things that I love about seeing kids. I think, like, project based learning. I had the opportunity of being in a school that in the first year of opening was a P21 exemplar school. And so creativity was at the forefront of what kids do.
Yeah. And does that come from, so you talked about play, and there's research out there that talks about, when kids stop playing, their growth, their growth mindset kind of, instead of going up, starts to decline. Um, what has happened in your point of view as an educator? What do you feel has happened in the educational environment in regards to the creative side of things? How has those changes caused the change or shift of how young people, let's say older kids, uh, grow in regards to their educational and engagement?
I think we're on a swing the other direction,
Okay.
honestly. Like, because like KCK has their Diploma Plus, and that's their market value assets in every district, the real world learning. I If it's done well, and if it's um, done with like student voice,
Hmm.
creativity comes out of that, right?
Yes.
Um, if I get to choose something that I'm passionate about and it gives me joy, like nursing or those teaching cohorts, we have trying to think like robotics and things like that's coming back into the schools, where schools are bringing in like robotics clubs and knitting clubs. Like, that's weaving in that creativity, and then the students are able to produce a product, produce a thing that was an idea that they took it and they built out. And some of the student led clubs are really neat as well, but they're an incentive to get the kids to come to school, to sit in the seat. But it is, again, it's play. They're
Right.
they're playing in a different way. It's not the same thing, coding or all of that stuff. And so I do feel like we're at a point where it's kind of the pendulum is swinging the other way, that play is coming back into school. It just doesn't look like um, uh, traditional play, because
Yeah.
it's in a different way. The kids are using really high cognitive skills in those places.
Yeah. You're talking about play. We had an opportunity, the team here at LEC had an opportunity to go to two schools in KCK today. And the schools had invited us to work with the graduating seniors, that they could decorate their mortars or their caps, and wear those for graduation. And just to see, the first school that we were at, we had about 35 students, and just to see the energy and the excitement and the ideas and the creativity and the glue and the paint and the glitter and the this, and it was so great to be a part of that. Because I think back when I graduated, I don't even think that we got to keep our cap and gown, or that dare we ever do anything that would damage something that was purchased. And so, and I think about when I graduated from my master's program, I thought it was cool that I would wear a sarape stole, and this was back in the early 90s. And one of the administrators came over to me and said, "You can't wear that." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" And it's like,
Mhm.
"Well, you can't wear something like that that's not sanctioned by the school." And I'm like, "But it represents me
Mhm.
as you know, my cultural identity." And this was 1996, and I was just like, "No, no, I'm wearing it." And all the my classmates kind of and we were adults. It wasn't like we were teenage students. We were adult students, and they all kind of stood up and like, "Well, she's not going to get to wear that and not walk. Then we're not walking." And we were like sitting in the line, queued up to walk on to receive our masterhoods. But it's that joy of being able to kind of create something that is uniquely you and identifies culturally or ethnically or racially or just your own identity. I think kind of what you were saying, it's really a strong mechanism that young people now have that they can feel the strength of who they are, their identity, and put it out in front. So I
Yeah.
think I love those, all of those type of projects that get to happen. Um, so let's keep going in this whole idea of art. What so many students, especially Latinx youth, or um, struggle to feel seen in school, right? And think about all the other identities that young people you know struggle with finding what is their right one, or how do they present themselves. How did you create spaces, or how do you feel about creating spaces for young people that are trying to find an identity that may not be a part of the mainstream?
Mhm. It's a great question. And I don't know that I've really thought a whole lot about that in a while. And I say that because um, again, going back to like where I used to teach, and someone says, "Do you miss this?" And I miss being with kids, like
Yeah.
as a teacher, but at the same time, I am really focused on the teachers
Uh,
and what it is that they need, because when our teachers' cups are filled, then we also know our students' cups are filled.
gotcha.
Um, so I have to think about that a little bit more, but I do know I see the clubs at schools. I see the space. One of our high schools has this really great newcomer group,
Hmm.
and I think there's around like 30 kids that are Latino in the group, and it came out of a need. That building just had an influx of newcomer students, new Americans, and they they're thriving because they have that community. And so I do love to see that.
Hmm.
I know that our district also has like our Enough is Enough initiative, and there's students that are on that. And I guess I should also say, like, my department has our translators interpreters program, and this is our third year, and we bring in high schoolers from across the district that are interested in learning the art of translation interpretation. And we had our
Okay.
celebration last week for our seniors that are graduating, and they really spoke to feeling seen
Mhm.
in this space because they were able to leverage their identity and their language.
Okay.
So yeah, I didn't answer your question, but I'm gonna think about it some more.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I mean, and it's always tough. I mean, I don't know if there's any groups or clubs or support in your district for, let's say, LGBTQIA students. And if there are, where can they go and find information? Or, how many more newcomer groups need to happen? Or what if you're a newcomer and you have this other identity that's part of who you are? How does that work? And where can you go and feel safe and feel seen and engaged and so on and so forth? So those type of things, I think, are what a lot of people are looking for now.
Hmm. Yeah, and I will say, um, each of our high schools and our middle schools have sort of like their own identity, and they do have like the clubs that are specific to them. I actually had a principal ask if we had, if anybody from my department had a connection to like people from African backgrounds. We get a lot of kiddos from like the Congo or um, other African um, cities and stuff that come into our district, and he's noticing that they need to be seen. So he's trying to find like, how do I get some mentors? How do I get some people in the community to come and sit with my kids often? And so that's more so how like I work and navigate with those things. I'm not in a building every
Oh,
day.
sure. Hmm.
Mm.
Yeah, nope, that makes sense. So let's talk a little bit about legacy and change. And so looking back and looking forward, right? So after decades in education and activism, um, what changes make you hopeful and what still needs to change in regards to education in the state of Kansas, education in the metro area, in your district, across the country, across the world?
Um, I think I get excited by like the opportunities for kids again, like that real world experience.
Mhm.
We're talking about college a lot sooner. We're putting things in front of kids, and also echoing that like college isn't the only pathway. You can do lots of different things. Um, so I yeah, kind of stumped me with another question to really.
Well, let me ask you this way. How would you what would you like your legacy to be? I know not anywhere near retiring or stopping, but if you were to look forward, let's say 20 years, what would you want your legacy to be? How do we remember Dr. Jackie Rodriguez?
I I hope that at some point I'm remembered as someone that um, left things better than they were. I am a very systems level thinker, and so that is my skill set to kind of put things in place.
Mhm,
And I love a good challenge of taking something like this is what we do and really putting it in a way that um, it sustains. I want to leave sustaining programs for the district. I want to leave sustaining programs for our parents. I also hope that um, I am seen as like a people person. We're in the business of people, right? Like I hope that every parent that I work with, every student that I work with, every teacher that I work with feels seen and honored in any way
mhm,
that we've interacted. And I do feel like I put those deposits in, but we're really thinking about parent engagement through one of the programs that I work with. And um, I want to see that our parents feel built up and that I love this year to see how excited parents are um, with graduation. And I want every parent to feel that.
mhm. Yeah, and so you talked about a program that you do out of your organizational structure, and that's the interpreters. So that's kind of a graduation or pinning ceremony, or how do parents react to that? Because you've really have given, and I don't know if there's a certificate that the students get. Talk to us a little bit about that program, because we do leverage a lot of interpreters in the work that we do, and as in school districts, having somebody there in the office when a family comes in and they need those interpretive services. Tell us a little bit about that program.
Yeah. So the students, it's like an internship for them. They do get their like our KCK Diploma Plus. It is considered a market value asset, and then those kiddos also get access to the assessment for syllabi literacy
Mhm,
if that's something that they choose to do. We have brought in different industries for like training. We've had nurses, we've had Christy has been in to talk about like how she works with interpreting, and she just did a session with the kids this year around transcreation,
Hmm.
which I had never heard of, but the kids were really piqued by that idea of like, oh, you can creatively use your language by working on projects. And so we really try to put like professionals in front of them. We don't want it to just be interpreters and translators. And I want the kids to take away that like it is an asset. They should be compensated for that. They shouldn't do it for free. But what we hear from parents and what I've heard over time is that the confidence that the kids build,
Hmm.
or I've been told like, oh, my son speaks more Spanish to me now.
Hmm.
Um, and that's like, I think that is something that parents, in this day and age, just some like your parent talks to you in Spanish, you respond in English. I was one of those kids. I'm still like that with my dad, right? But the kids have built a self confidence, and we had a kid. He was like, I suck at this. I'm not good. He comes back every month, and he's like, I'm gonna get better. I'm gonna be able to sit and interpret. And it's like it's that determination and that identity. And we have over 10 languages that are represented in our group of around like 30 kids. So then bringing in other adults that can work with them in their language, and they can build up that literacy. It's really it's so cool to see
Oh yeah.
kids do that. And so then they get to interpret at district level events. We have them supporting leadership and learning. They've been invited to be like um, table host at different things. They go to parent teacher conference, and we do training around academic vocabulary. And so they welcome families. They'll sit on easy parent teacher conference meetings with teachers, and that's how they collect their hours. And then we are in partnership with the Nelson, and the kids participate in the family field trip day.
Mhm.
It happens in April, but they are the language support for the Nelson, and they get a training and a t-shirt and all of that. Like it some of the kids have now leveraged any events at school to use that to get hours as well. So if their school's doing something, um, we had one of the girls was like, well, I'm in ROTC, and when we have our parent events, like I do the Spanish. Can I count those for hours? I'm like, absolutely. Like you can
Oh,
100%
that's
count
excellent.
those for hours. So they're finding ways to be creative and figure
Mhm.
out what they're comfortable with, to be able to speak. And I think all of the kids have said that they built a lot of comfort. I wish I could have recorded one of our students. She shared last week that she was at a parent teacher conference, and the teacher was really upset with the parent and was like, you don't send home any of the papers, blah, blah, blah. So that she tells the parent, the teacher is upset. You haven't sent any of the papers. The mom says, well, I don't read and I don't write. And so then she tells that to the teacher. And in that fixed a relationship that was not a strong one. And the teacher felt such empathy, and for the parent, that they didn't know there was that issue when challenged. The teacher just was like, she doesn't turn anything in, and the mom didn't turn anything in because she didn't know what she was signing or what she was looking at. And so now they've been able to repair that, and the teacher now communicates in a different way. And she said that was like the most rewarding thing that she has ever done. And so I hope that our kids, like, I hope those are the things that are like not necessarily my legacy, but that I had an opportunity to touch.
Yeah, but it is kind of your legacy, Dr. Rodriguez. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
You just gave a perfect example of multiple aha moments simultaneously happening through your program.
Yeah.
You had a student that sat there, and two adults had conflict. And one adult assumed something about another adult, and then the other adult had no idea that that assumption was being made about them, but hadn't shared that they didn't have the skills needed to be able to communicate. And so Oh my God, that was wow.
I
That is
know, and
great.
she said this in front of all of the parents there, and she prepared it, and I was like, "I wish I would have recorded," and that was just one of the stories. The other kids had really amazing stories too, but that is our community that we're
Yeah.
serving in. It's one thing for me to go to my supervisors and say like, "Hey, these are the problems. Like we have parents that can't read and write. We have to think, why do we have to send everything in writing? Can't we send audio blasts? Can't we do these things?" And then for it to come from the kids, because their voice is what matters the most. My legacy, that whatever that may be, it's what do they do with what they've learned from our district, from our teachers, from all of that. Like that is what gives me the most joy about education, for sure.
And that's that whole urgency and speed.
Hmm.
Writing it is speed, but the urgency of it, if you could do it in a different way, you'd have more engagement, response, participation, more. Yeah, wow. That's a great story. That right there is a great story. And the reason why your program exists and the reason behind, why kids get that, what you were describing was a sense of pride,
Hmm.
you know, that they could respond and communicate fully, completely, holistically
Hmm.
in those moments. And what that young person did for two adults really changed both of those adults' trajectory. The
Hmm.
teacher as the educator, knowing that not all assumptions should be made about the people you're dealing with, and how do you approach engaging the people you're working with and partnering with them, completely where they what they're presenting with, partnering with them at that stage, and the mom just being honest, being
Yeah.
vulnerable, and saying, I can't. I want to, back to our stories of ask a lot of questions. I can support you. I don't know how to get you through that, or over that or engaged with that, but I'm here for you. And the mom showed up,
Yeah.
right? That was part of the battle,
Hmm.
right? There are a lot of parents that, for whatever reason, for whatever difficulties, they're not able to be at the schools for parent teacher conference, but that mom was there. And
Yeah.
so,
And I think a lot about the way that we internalize engagement, right? I always use my dad's a great example of it. He has that invisible engagement. He never
mm,
went to the conferences. He didn't do the things, but he has even to this day, like as I'm getting ready to graduate this weekend, and he'll be in town, and it my I get teary eyed. He
that's
always he's like, "What are you learning? What did you do in class today?" Like
mm,
that is also our parents getting there and what and how they can.
mhm.
And my dad is like, "Well, what's next?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't think there's anything else next. Like I think this is as far as you go." And he's like, "So, wow, like my dad made everybody cry. We FaceTimed him after my advisor announced that I was now Dr. Rodriguez. My dad was like, "Oh," and my mom was there, and it was such an awesome thing. But I had those parents that like they didn't know a lot, and they uh, but they were highly engaged. My dad has always been highly engaged. He maybe didn't show up to the things, but he also, you know, you have to think about engagement differently. It's not just our parents that show up, it's also the parents that maybe are helping with the homework at home or are trying to navigate it. My dad was always really interested in what we were reading at school because my dad was learning how to read in English at the same time I was learning how to read. And
Right,
parents
exactly.
are doing that. And so, yeah.
No, I hear and that's all pride,
Hmm.
right? That's all orgullo,
Hmm.
it's the eagle's wings,
Yeah.
right? And that's the beauty of our community,
Hmm.
is how much our parents love us, the sacrifices that they make, are
Yeah.
willing to make, and engage at how they are able to. Yeah, now you've got me crying. Engage with us at the level that we need to, We need them to. Those are great examples that you can pass on to your daughter as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, congratulations.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much for sharing all of this with us over this past hour. You just your generosity is wonderful. And now, when I get off camera, I'll stop crying because I can feel all of that. And um, just the whole idea that there is somebody like Dr. Jackie Rodriguez at the KCK USD 500 district that cares so passionately about the students and about the district and wanting it to be more, to do more, to be better, and to do better. And so just greatly appreciate all of that, all that you do. And bravo, congratulations. And just whatever we can do, however we can help, whatever you need, LEC is here. This is exactly why we do the work that we do, because we love the opportunity to chat with individuals like yourself. So thank
Thank
you.
you. Well, I'm going to do a plug because I need ESL teachers for secondary. So if there's any teachers that want, like, please reach out to me. I've got a couple of openings. Secondary is my hardest to fill. But I have some great buildings that are looking for a teacher that is committed and devoted to them.
Fantastic. Okay. Dr. Rodriguez, that's who you all need to contact if you're looking for, what was it?
I'm secondary ESL
Okay.
position.
Secondary ESL. So fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care. Have a great summer.